Because that story, right, that flows through that institution says, oh gosh, you're not married. Now you're not safe. You're alone. You're all these things because you are not in a partnership. Like you stepped outside the norm, outside the conditioning. You left. And that's not okay. We've all come here with a divine purpose, traveling on a stream of cosmic dust from the stars into our mother's wombs, born into this precious life. It is no accident that you are here, my love, on earth, in this moment, in this body. You are here longing to find your place, to align with your purpose, to embody your passions and to live into the dreams of your heart. Yet so often we get caught, suspended in the tangle of life, not able to move forward, not able to find solace and comfort in a world that has forgotten the truth of our existence. As we begin to remember, as we peel back the layers, as we come together to uncover our unique gifts and reconnect with our authentic selves, we are able to see another way of being, a new possibility, a different life waiting to be lived. I have experienced on this complicated and wild journey of life that when we connect with the story of our soul, it will show us the magic of this life that we have been missing. It will open a window into the very heart of who we truly are, of who we came here to be, and gives us answers to our ever-asking why. Hello, my loves. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for being here. As always, love this podcast and offering it to the world, offering it to you, knowing that it is changing you and changing the world that we live in. And I just have the most incredible guests. I really, really do. Just such wonderful, special people. And Connie, our guest today, is one of those people. She just showed up with so much vulnerability, with a really beautiful example of what it looks like when we are willing to look deep into every part of us. And before we dive into this beautiful call, I do want to remind you that Ignite Your Intuition, the free guide, is available for you. There's a link in the show notes, and it is a guide that I created with you in mind, really wanting to give you resources and ways that you can connect with this internal wisdom that lives inside of us. If everybody turned towards their heart, towards their intuition, and their own personal growth, we would live in an entirely different world. So I so thank you for being on this journey and for being willing to look. And that guide includes meditation, ceremony, audio teachings, a workbook for you to look at what's going on for you and how you can change your relationship with your intuition. There's also a link in the show notes to the quiz, Discover Your Primal Intuitive Power. This will help you understand which is your primary, most potent intuitive gift and teach you ways to access it so that you have more resources. So I love giving you these gifts. So Connie is here because she feels she's lost her mojo. And she is not originally from the US. She's lived here for over 20 years. And her husband, a number of years ago, left her for another woman. And she is still struggling with this. And so we go on this really heartfelt, vulnerable journey about finding ourselves after relationship and when our hopes and dreams are shattered and the things that we had expected for our future are not the future that we're walking into. So thank you, Connie. I really appreciate you on this call. Some of the things we look at are how so often we are not actually still grieving the person. We are actually grieving the fantasy that we had created around this person. We look at the collective patriarchal narratives regarding marriage and what it means to be getting older and divorced. Very, very potent collective narrative around that. We talk about how when you leave a marriage, you are not just leaving a person, you are leaving an institution that was created to sell people as property. So there's a lot going on in the background when we get divorced, a lot more than we realize. We look at how our sense of belonging actually comes from inside us. It's not something that we can gather from outside of us. And we look at rewriting your internal narratives and radically loving and accepting ourselves. And we throw in a little energetic tool at the end about gathering your pieces of your heart that have been broken. So I hope this tool really supports you. It's something you can do. It's very easy and it brings a sense of wholeness and can really disentangle you from relationships that you might still be connected to. So my loves, enjoy this beautiful reading. I love you. Hi, Connie. Welcome to the show. How can I help you today?
Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for having me. My question is, I do feel a bit lost and without purpose. And I always say kind of like without mojo for quite a while already. And I was just wondering what your take is on it or what you can see or hear. I have moved away from my home country to be married in a different country. And that marriage now broke apart. And somehow everybody thought I would come back home, but I'm still here because home would be a different lifestyle. And I like the lifestyle here, but it comes with challenges. So maybe that's where the lostness comes from. Not sure.
Yeah, thank you. What I see is that pieces of your heart are still connected to your marriage. So even though you're divorced, there's still this energy that is being siphoned out through your heart. It makes me short of breath, actually. And it's still going over to your ex-husband or your partner. And it's creating this inability of you to fully move on because you're leaking energy over there. So do you know about that or connect in with that?
Yeah, I did a lot of grief work around it. I did a lot of emotional work around it. But one of the things that I always thought was that I would marry somebody and then grow old with that person. And it's almost like I feel like a failure because I didn't manage to do that. So you feel right. So it's still hurting. It is him as a person, maybe too, but it's more that I grieve the thought of being married to one person for the rest of my life, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. The way I see that kind of grief, right? It's like you've processed the person, yet you're grieving the fantasy that was created and that you imagined that you would live into.
Yes, that's very well put. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can collect those pieces of your heart back.
Please.
Yeah. Yeah, you can just reach out and gather those pieces of your heart that are still connected. It's actually an energetic maneuver. It's not an emotional or necessarily processing the wound. You have done quite a bit of work around that. I still see there are some tendrils there connecting you, though, but they are really connected in with that fantasy that we're fed, like, oh, this one person, and we're going to be old with them, so we don't have to be old alone, and it's all going to be wonderful. And it's really not how life works. And so you can reach right into that fantasy and pull those pieces of your heart back. And I can do a couple for you if you would like.
Yes, please. I just wanted to say, I wonder how, because in a way, this was one of the, well, let's call it fantasies that I always had. And I have actually examples in my social environment where people managed to do that. And I know it wouldn't have been happily ever after. It would just probably have been hard work, but it's still bothering me. And so, yeah, I would like you to maybe help me get some of these hard pieces back on how to do this.
There you go. While you've been talking, I've been pulling some back for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let me see where they want to take us with this. It's a really interesting narrative, right? That we're fed about what marriage is and what it can give us and what it can help us avoid. And I think, especially as we get older and we walk through the divorce portal, a lot of our identity can get caught, and we end up straddling these two worlds. So it's okay if you're old and married, right? There's a level of okayness in being alone if you're partnered. And this is a collective narrative. This is not what I'm saying you're saying. And then there's this other narrative that says, oh, now you're old and divorced. Oh, that's a rough place to be. And we get really caught in that. And it is actually energetic, right? There is an emotional component. There is loneliness. There's uncertainty. There's all the regular ingredients of life. Yet we also get caught in the stickiness of what society tells us is okay or is not okay. And so your mojo got eaten by that story.
I so often have the thought that, oh, now I'm going to become an old spinster. So you kind of picked up on that this is the narrative that I have. And also because I actually moved to a different country for this marriage, and now the marriage is over. And that adds a layer to the complexity, maybe, at least in my eyes.
How so?
So I have really good connections in my home country. Even though I'm already gone for 20 years, my best friends are still there. And here in the new country, or new after 20 years, right? I still don't have such a solid social environment as I have at home. So that adds to it. And this is where I'm saying most people thought I'd just go back home. But it's a toss between, you can't just go back home, so to called home, to somewhere where you haven't been in 20 years. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, right, I see that fantasy threaded through what going home would mean, because home is not the same place that you left. You are not the same person that left. And so there's that draw of these deeper relationships. And yet there's a whole life in this other country that isn't even yours anymore. So it would again be built on something that was from the past rather than what is the actual reality that you would be walking into.
Yes, and actually pretty aware of that. So that's kind of, even after 4.5 years past divorce, I'm still here because I can see that I would kind of walk backwards or walk into something that is not real, that is more how it used to be, and now it would be different. I can see that, and yet I'm still feeling like I haven't 100% landed in the new space because I don't have that tight-knit social net, maybe, or because I'm still having pieces of my heart everywhere. Who knows?
Yeah. So I see you as you're talking. It's like you're being held back. You're in this kind of sticky, gooey stuff, and you're really working to move forward, and yet it's holding you. It's not letting you move. And this is energetic again, right? Even that line, you're going to be a spinster, that's fed through the collective narrative. That's not your thought, my love. You're an incredibly divine, intuitive, intelligent woman that's built a life that then crumbled in devotion to something. You just don't know what yet. And yet here you have this goo that's telling you that, oh, well, now it's over. Like you're going to be a spinster, you're divorced, there's nothing left. And it's so easy to believe that that is actually coming from inside you.
Yeah, that's just it, right? You never or it's really hard to keep apart what is coming from inside of you. I mean, I'm trying to listen to myself. I'm very aware and mindful person. But how do we distinguish between what's so spoon-fed to us all our life and what is actually really coming from us, right?
This is the spiritual path.
Yeah, exactly. And like somehow mentally inside of me, I know, well, that doesn't have to be that way, that I end up as the lonely old spinster. That's where, anyways, a very dark picture. But when we're struggling, and like you said, I'm in this goo, I can feel it, I'm held back. And I feel like after 4.5 years, I should be further, which is probably also a lie. Then those thoughts come up, and how do I figure out whether they're just lies that come or whether they're actually really nudges that hold some truth in them?
Yeah, I'm pulling some of this goo off you right now because it's got you good. One of the things to remember, right, is you're not just leaving a person, you left an institution. You left a very old institution that sold women as property,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's very different today in the way that it's marketed. And yet, the truth is, when we leave, we're still leaving a very old consciousness of an institution. And so we get to navigate that as well as the heartache and the financial situations and the death of the fantasy. We're also leaving and disentangling ourselves from an institutional consciousness.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's interesting. Before I got married, I was a very, very independent person. And I probably wouldn't have gotten married if he weren't from a different country, right? And just made things easier back then to actually be together. And now I'm so in the goo of this aftermath of this institution. So that's probably also where my loss of mojo comes from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that story, right, that flows through that institution says, oh gosh, you're not married. Now you're not safe. You're alone. You're all these things because you are not in a partnership. Like you stepped outside the norm, outside the conditioning. You left. And that's not okay.
Mm-hmm. And not in your home country, right? Like kind of in a foreign country, even though I'm here for 20 years, but you're always kind of not from this country in the end.
Mm-hmm. What would be different if you were from this country?
It's funny you ask that. I don't know whether I can answer that. It's more like I never felt like I belong, and not even back in my home country. So probably that would have to change, that I actually do belong, and I never felt I belong.
Yeah, well, belonging comes from inside you. It's not anything that anybody outside can give you.
Yes, I worked on that a lot. And yet, I just often feel that as much as I love to be alone, as much as I belong to myself, I would love to somehow belong to something in addition. And yeah, but that may be another fantasy that makes no sense.
Not necessarily. We are designed to belong. We need each other. We're all interconnected as a species. So it's part of our inherent ability to thrive and survive here is to be loved and to belong. Yet, the ability for us to belong on the outside and really feel that we do belong, it has to be internal first. So it's both, right? It's coming to that place inside you that is disconnected from the belonging inside you that will then create belonging on the external.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What is stopping you from creating deeper friendships at this point now?
I wouldn't say anything is stopping me. I just seemed not very successful so far. I mean, it's not like I have nobody here. That would probably be very unfair to say. It's just when you're single, it might not be enough to just see some friends once a month or so. So the separation came right before the pandemic. During the pandemic, we were forced to stay home, right, and separate us. So I was alone for a very long time. So maybe I'm hiding still. Yeah, I'm hiding also because I feel like I failed. That's probably what's stopping me, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, a misguided belief that because you chose you and walked away from something that wasn't working, you failed. Why do you believe that you failed?
Wasn't actually me that walked away. I was exchanged for somebody else. So let's say like that. So it hit me in the core, in my self-worth. And I had a long time to disconnect my self-worth from that situation. So now my self-worth is maybe not in question anymore, but I still feel like I failed because I got exchanged. Like just put an old pair of socks to the side and grab a new pair. I don't know why I came with this example. I don't think I ever compared myself to a sock.
It shows you've done a lot of healing around it.
Now I have to heal the sock.
Oh, yeah, that's very hard when you're in that dynamic of leaving a relationship. I understand that. So for you, right, it's dismantling the part that is deeply personalizing someone else's behavior that really didn't have much to do with you. What happens when you look at it through that lens?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of work around that. The other person's actions have technically nothing to do with me. But of course, when you're going through a separation, you hear from the other side so much what all you did wrong and why you're at fault, that what happened happened kind of thing. So I get it mentally, let's say like this, but emotionally, I'm still bruised, if that makes sense. I do get it mentally that we're all responsible for our own actions. Nobody else can make us do anything. And so this also works the other way around. But emotionally, this information or this insight hasn't helped me in healing properly, maybe. I don't know. Or that's maybe wrong because I feel like I healed a lot, but it didn't get me out of this fantasy that I should have been in one marriage till the end of my life and not have my husband walk away with somebody else.
What would it mean about you if that fantasy had played out?
You mean if I still married and we would be married till one of us dies or whatever? Yeah. So the thought that came to me when you asked me that was it would be proof that I'm lovable. And it shocks me when I have to say it out loud because that's probably also some conditioning because we're all born lovable. But that's what came up.
Yeah. So in that I see, right, it's not really about him, but it's this tender part of you that is confused about your lovability, that thinks that somebody else needs to prove this to you.
Yeah, it makes no sense when you say it that way, right? I mean, it literally makes no sense. And still, that's what came up. So,
It makes sense to some part of you.
yeah.
Where do you feel it in your body?
In the solar plexus, you don't know how I want to call it. It's like festering there.
Hmm. Does it have a color?
what's surprising is, yes, it has my favorite color, yellow.
Mm. Why is yellow your favorite color?
My favorite flower is sunflowers, and yellow represent sunflowers. It's an optimistic color, in my opinion. And so this shocks me that when you ask me what color it is, that it actually yellow comes up.
How does that change it?
I don't know yet.
How would you like it to change it?
I would like it, instead of sucking the life out of me, to give me life. Like, it's almost like what image comes to me is like, instead of turning to the left, turning to the right, or vice versa, like whatever would give me the energy rather than sucking it out of me.
Mm-hmm. What do you think would need to happen for that change?
Accepting the situation and moving on, or letting go of the fantasy, which is still here. And it's like, mentally, I know how silly it is to have this fantasy, because the fantasy will never become real because I am divorced. So
Rather than making that fantasy silly, what if you were to love that fantasy? And that even though it didn't end up being yours, it doesn't make you wrong for having it. It's a beautiful fantasy.
it is a beautiful fantasy. And that, like I said, I have some examples in the social environment that show that it is possible. It's just not possible for me. I guess that wasn't my path.
You keep bringing me back to the yellow and how it feels like there's this festering, this part of you, this self love, the needing to be proved that you're lovable. And I wonder what you're learning about yourself and about this situation with this journey we've been on.
So a lot of work I did since the divorce is that I actually love myself, have self-love, right? And I think I came a long way already, but I'm probably still need to, not even nearly there, to say that I love myself. That might also be like the social narrative, because a lot of people think you're selfish when you love yourself, right? So at least that's how I grew up. It just seems like I'm not a very patient person, or I can be very impatient, let's say like this, but I'm very tenacious, I think is the word I want to say. So I just have to keep going and keep at it and getting out of this failure feeling into the self-love and into the acceptance.
Yeah, I wonder if there's something that you can do right now. You've connected in with this feeling where this lives in your body, this failure, this needing to be proved. With this color yellow and the sunflowers and the truth of who you are and all this work you've done, is there a way to shift through just imagining something different in this place, connecting differently to the way that this lives inside you, and not needing to make it more work that you have to do?
I wouldn't know right now how to shift, but when you said that, I felt like, oh yeah, that would be nice to not have to do more work, right? Like if I could just maybe look at it from a different angle instead of trying to push and learn and do and heal and this doing, and become maybe more into the being.
Mm-hmm. Because they're all actions that are designed to prove that you're lovable.
Yeah.
To yourself, to others.
Probably mostly to myself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a rich place for you right here. You've come down to this nugget of what is underneath. And it can be easy. It doesn't have to be hard. When we have this level of awareness, when you have some energetic tools, you can renegotiate the relationship and the story that lives here in this place. What story would you like to live there?
What that I'm on the right path, and that this was necessary to find to myself, and that from here on I can because of this experience, I can live a richer life now. Something along that line, maybe, or and more empathic. That's the wrong word. More be softer with myself and others. Maybe let's say like that.
Yeah.
I think I need to let it sink a little bit longer, and might not make much sense what I'm babbling here right now. So
We ended up in a very tender and vulnerable part of you. So thank you, because it's in the willingness to be in these places that the shifts happen. And you might not have all the words right now or can see exactly where it's going. Yet just your willingness to be here, knowing that something can be different, is already changing who you are.
yes, thank you. Thank you for getting me here.
Thank you for being willing. How can I support you from here?
Well, I think you did already so much. So thank you. Maybe one tip or how I can, on my own, get these pieces of my heart back when they're wanting to go astray, or the ones that are still out there somewhere.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought us back there, because what you're also showing me is that where those heart pieces that even go further back into your childhood, where this unlovable belief started.
Yeah, I know that.
So you can tune into your heart. And as you tune in, you'll use your imagination, use your senses, your intuition, however you are able to sense what we can't ordinarily see. You look for lines that are going out from your heart. They're quite far out. The ones from your husband are closer. The ones from your childhood are further. And you feel out, you follow that line, and at the end of that line are the pieces of your heart. And you can gather them gently with your fingers and just intend that you're returning only you, right? Anything else that it is stuck to stays behind. And then you bring it back and you hold it on a flat palm in front of your heart, maybe a foot out, 12 to 18 inches, and you let your heart pull it in. And maybe do that 3 or 4 times and then let it rest. Let your body process.
3 or 4 times in one session, you mean? Or 3 or 4 times?
Yeah.
Okay.
So imagine your relationship with your husband and collect pieces from there. And then imagine those situations from your childhood and you collect your pieces from there. You don't want to force them into your body. You want to hold them out and offer them to your body.
Yes. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Does this feel like an okay place to land today?
Yeah, very beautiful place to land. Thank you.